Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brand John never wants to follow. Get ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
The BJ Show for Tuesday, July 8th. So happy it's Tuesday, John.
You know, Brad, you left us with a cliffhanger yesterday in C Block about you gave us a cryptic message about what you were doing on Monday night and you wouldn't tell us. I guess my question for you is, how was the Overeaters Anonymous meeting?
There's an interesting story I could tell you about a woman I knew who was in OE. It is. If I tell the story, I will be in trouble because people will figure out who it is. But it was not me. So, I mean, look, John, I've freely admitted at one point in time when I graduated from high school, I know you're going to roll your eyes because you've heard this story 20,000 times. I weighed 162, weighed myself the morning I graduated, went to gym at Hazelwood High School, worked out that morning at the gym, then went home, got dressed for my graduation, but I weighed myself 162. 2 years later, I weighed 310. So if there's anybody who knows about overeating, it's me.
So you pretty much doubled your weight right away. That's what a lot of guys can say when they graduate from high school and they marry their high school sweetheart.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about it is don't go into that about my 10-year high school reunion because, you know, I don't know if you remember this or not. You're probably too young for this, but my year we went to state and we did something that's never been done before in the history of state football championships in the state of Missouri. Never will be done again. We tied. And at the end of the game.
Wow, that's awesome.
At the end of the game, there was nothing in the rule book for what you did at a tie. So they declared us and Cape Girardeau co-state champions. And the interesting thing was when I went for my 10-year reunion, and I was married at the time, and keep in mind all these stud football players were good-looking guys, you know, in great shape and full head of hair. And by a 10-year reunion, most of them had big old beer guts, and most of them lost most of their hair. So that's so much for the football team, right? Right, John?
Many of them had, yeah.
Yeah, okay. This is John Combest's show. I'm just along for, you know, comic relief and say some stupid things like I'm going to sterilize soil and things like that. But John is the star because we start off the show with his top three. Now, what John does every single day of his life for 23 years, never missed a day, he puts together this incredible list of all the important stuff you should know about going on in the state of Missouri. Sometimes it's 20 things, sometimes 30, 40, sometimes 50. Have you ever hit 60, John? Do you know if you ever hit 60?
Never counted. Don't have any idea. I'm not really a notch count guy, Brad. I don't really count the numbers that I rack up.
Well, that's not what your girlfriend told me, but that's a whole other story.
Which one? You haven't talked to all of them, have you?
I'm not going to say anything. Okay, we start off with this guy. We bring in a special guy. We dust him off, pull him out of the grave. Casey?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what do you do?
Now on with the countdown.
And we start off with?
In third place.
I have a story that's going to warm your heart for story number 3, Brad, because it has to do with a local radio station. It also has to do with the power of local radio, not just in its community, but across the state and in some ways, Brad, across the country. And that station is KTTN in Trenton, Missouri. It's kind of, you could picture it kind of like, I guess, north central, maybe northwest central, north of Chillicothe. Can you picture that, Brad?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, up there where nobody lives.
Well, in your mind, Brad, nobody lives there, but we do have a lot of farmers there, right?
Yeah, well, they don't live there. They commute back and forth between Columbia.
Well, the point I'm getting to, Brad, is that this story is about KTTN, but there's something that we can all learn from it. Now, you might recall, Brad, a few weeks ago, I had a story up on my website about the New World screwworm. And the New World screwworm is a vicious pest that attacks cattle. And there's no New World screwworm in the United States, but it has devastated cattle across the world. It is a parasite. So just think of it as a parasite. According to the USDA, it burrows into the flesh of animals, causing serious damage or potentially killing the animal. So what happened, and I should point out before we begin, that this version of the story is brought to us by a gentleman named Chris Six. He's from the Farm Progress family of publications, which publishes the outlet called Missouri Ruralist. I started calling them a newspaper, but they're more of a magazine called Missouri Ruralist. So Chris Six brought us the story. The point is, Brad, on May 27th, KTTN published a story on their website about the fact that the New World screwworm had come to Missouri, had somehow jumped across other states, made its way into Missouri. The cattle market moved immediately. Our Department of Agriculture director, Chris Chen, says that the story affected national cattle market futures anywhere from between $250,000 to $500,000 right away, immediately, based on this story. Now, Brad, the only thing wrong with this story is that there was no New World screwworm in Missouri. As it turns out, Brad, KTTN published this piece of quote-unquote news on their website without anybody taking human eyes and looking at it. Now, the folks at KTTN say, look, it wasn't up long. In fact, it was up maybe for 5 minutes. They say that it was only up for 5 minutes, but had this kind of an effect. That math, by the way, doesn't seem – I don't know how that math works. If the radio station says it was only up for 5 minutes, and Chris Six points out that they took down the story the next day, so something there doesn't add up. KTTN editor Randall Mann says, the article was based on a press release, which upon further review was found to contain statements that were not factual. So, Brad, we have a story here of a local radio station publishing a story that's not true. It affects cattle markets. It eventually gets fixed. The market, has a tendency to work itself out. But I went to KTTN this morning and I looked, and they do this thing, Brad, where they use automated feeds. Remember RSS feeds, Brad?
Oh, yeah, I love them.
Yeah, I know you do. And so they have an RSS feed for national bureaus, news bureaus, and they have one that pulls stories from NPR, and they have another feed that pulls stories from Google News. So what we have here, Brad, my guess, and by the way, the folks from Chris Chen and the folks from Missouri Department of Agriculture can't say much because the investigation is ongoing. There's actually a group that goes out and looks at what are considered to be rural crimes to investigate, hey, how exactly were these markets affected? Who's behind this so-called press release? The State Highway Patrol has a rural crimes investigative unit. So what it appears to be, Brad, is that this radio station pulled generic stories from somewhere without a human looking at it. Farmers and the community saw it, started spreading the word, and it affected national markets. So a good example, Brad, of why sometimes a pair of human eyes and not relying on automation is a good way to run a news site.
John, interesting you mentioned that. I don't know if you know this or not. Do you know the derivation of that terrible infestation?
Was it from somebody smuggled something? Actually, I can't even guess. I'm just going to go to according to AI and ask.
No. It was originally, I don't know if you know this or not, but Larry Flint used to be a cattle rancher, and it infected his cattle, so that's how he named it.
Oh, get it. Okay, that took me a minute, Brad. It took me a minute. Way to go. Okay. I mean, people have always said you're a little screwy, Brad.
Okay, so
maybe it came from you. Maybe it came from the crap transmitter site.
It came from westplexnews.com. No, but okay, John, let me enlighten you. You say that there's a controversy about the fact that they said they took it down in 5 minutes, but then there was another part of the story that said it was taken down the next day.
Correct.
I know the story behind this. They put it up at 11.
Oh, what's that, Brad?
They put it up at 11:58 p.m. and they took it down at 12:03 a.m.
That makes perfect sense. That works very well. Now, if they were running RSS feeds correctly, they would follow the model of Westplex News, where every story is published twice.
You've been looking.
If you go to Westplex News, you'll see a story from the Missouri Independent posted twice. And sometimes you might think you have double vision. And then you'll see something pulled from another website, and it's posted once, and then it's immediately posted again, just in case you have one eyeball. You know anybody with one eyeball, Brad?
I do. That's me.
Maybe that, you know what? Now that I add it up, maybe that explains it.
John. Okay, so are they going to, is the Missouri Highway Patrol going to do something to KTTN? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think so. First of all, I think KTTN has suffered enough. I think that I'd like to think they probably learned their lesson. And look, mistakes happen when you automate stuff. I'm sure. I don't know because I don't automate anything. I'm not that type of person. I'm not that type of person, and I'm not so lazy as to do things like that and then not go back and double check them with a pair of human eyes, or in Brad's case, one eye. But I don't think anything will happen to KTTN. I do think that the AG's office is going to look at it would appear as though someone was trying to create mischief in the market for whatever reason. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think the good thing is people will hear the story, especially the people involved in agriculture. And that was Chris Chen's point. When you hear and see something like this, actually go to someone reputable. Check out the Missouri Department of Agriculture and see if they have a bulletin up about New World screwworm. Don't just look at some generic RSS feed and take it as at face value.
John, isn't this covered by Shakespeare?
What did he say, Brad?
Much ado about nothing? I mean, isn't this sort of a nothing story?
No, and I think if you go to the Missouri Ruralist story that I linked to today, Brad, Chris Chen gives an example of folks who had been holding on to cattle. So, for example, if you had been holding on to cattle for, let's say, the end of May, and you were trying to figure out whether to sell by the end of May and get an optimal price, like a $10 fluctuation in the price of cattle makes a difference. And so to laugh it off and say, who cares? It's just some cattle farmers. I mean, I think that would show the arrogance of somebody who relies on AI rather than their own eyes.
John, I feel sorry for some people. They are pretty lonely if they have to hold on to cattle. That's all I can say. Okay, up to number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Brad, I think a lot of suburban men were just offended that you talked about their wife. Speaking of Brad, do you have any stories or any theories about where the Chiefs and the Royals should move, Brad?
I know. John, I've said
Have you
this.
ever given any thought to this or even
Yes.
given a few moments on the show to talk about it?
St. Louis.
I hate to put you on the spot with a new idea, Brad.
St. Louis,
But do you
man.
have any idea of where the Chiefs and the Royals should move in Missouri?
The Royals should move to St. Louis. We have this Busch Stadium. And see, once again, I can't understand.
Wait, have we ever supported 2 Major League Baseball teams, Brad?
Yes.
Can you break down the number of home games and how it would work with 2 teams?
It would work perfectly. Matter of fact, can I give you a little bit of tidbit of information not too many people know?
Yeah, please do.
When the Browns were in St. Louis and the Cardinals were in St. Louis, the Browns were in the American League, the Cardinals were in the National League. They shared Busch Stadium number 1. So when the Cardinals were on the road, the Browns were at home.
AKA Sportsman's Park, Brad.
Yes, but then I believe it was Busch Stadium later on. Okay.
It was not. It was Sportsman's Park at
Okay,
Grand Dozier. Go
but
ahead, though.
do you-
I'm trying to get this out of the way so you don't step on story number 2, but go ahead.
Do you
okay,
know-
they each played 81 home games. They played in the 1944 World Series. It shows that we could support 2 teams, right? Where
Right.
should the Chiefs move, Brad?
Well, hold on a minute. There's one little bit of trivia. Do you know they had something very unique never to happen in baseball ever again, which happened right here in St. Louis?
They shared a bat boy in the 1944 World Series.
Yeah, no, they shared a bat boy the entire year. The same guy was on the bat boy
That
for
is
both teams.
amazing with 6 minutes left and 5 minutes left. And so, yes, Brad, you believe they should move here.
Yes.
Now, the actual piece of news, thank you for that, Brad. Now that we have that out of the way, the actual piece of news is that the state of Kansas has extended their deadline for both the Royals and the Chiefs to make their decision. And they have now until December 31st.
Really?
Originally, they only had till the end of June. But folks in Kansas voted together. The Legislative Coordinating Council voted unanimously, 7-0, to give the Royals and Chiefs a little bit more time to think it over. So that's good news for Kansas, right, Brad?
Well, I don't know that because I think both states are going to have egg in their face because the Royals are going to end up in Nashville. So both states are going to go, oh, we blew that one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think they're the main criteria for both the Royals and the Chiefs is to look at, they would say, gee, where do all the bachelorette parties go? And wherever that is, that's where we want to go.
Right,
and then they would
exactly.
clearly pick Nashville.
Right.
So, Brad, this is, if you're Kehoe and your Kehoe's team, you say, see, this shows what putting a good offer on the table is. This just goes to show that the Royals and the Chiefs Now, Kansas considers us so much a threat now that they're extending their own false deadline to make a decision.
You know, this is a perfect example of when we need WWBED.
What would Bill Eigel do, right?
Yes. What would Bill Eigel do? Bill Eigel would say, hey, we don't care where you move. Just put some good teams on the field. We don't give a poop about anything. We're not going to give you any money. We don't care if you move to Siberia. We don't care if you move to Ukraine. We don't care because we're not spending any state money on you guys. See, that's what would Bill Eigel do, don't you think?
And then no matter where they move, he would install skylights for them.
That's right. Okay.
You know who's got no glass ceiling, Brad? The subject of story number 1.
The number one.
U.S. Representative Ann Wagner was on the Mark Reardon show yesterday afternoon. You got to get a congresswoman on to talk about the one big beautiful bill. They started off doing the whole empathy statement thing where you talk about how you feel bad about people in Texas. And then once that was done, they got into the meat of the conversation, which is about the one big beautiful bill. Ann Wagner highlighted something that I haven't heard anybody highlight, Brad. And just because I haven't heard it doesn't mean nobody's been talking about it or nobody's reported on it. It just means that I hadn't heard it before. She lays out the defense provisions and what they mean for the St. Louis area. Ann Wagner says that total, overall, in the military and the defense area, nationwide, it means about $150 billion for global defense there. She says, quote, but here in St. Louis, $400 million of that will go for the F-47 stealth fighter, $100 million for these MQ-25s. They're the refueling drones that are built here in St. Louis, and another $50 million for the F-15EX Eagle fighter. So, and with that is impacted by the entire defense industrial base. So in other words, Brad, St. Louis, and critics would say the military industrial complex, ended up coming out pretty well with the one big beautiful bill. I think it's good news for St. Louis.
It is. I can't wait to see the F-47, although I keep saying instead of one F-47, for the price of one F-47, we could have 100,000 drones or something like that. Wouldn't that be
Do you think drones, or has anybody across the world used drones more cheaply, or I don't know, experimented with guerrilla warfare?
No.
Would you call it symmetrical, Brad, or was there another word besides symmetrical? Would you throw another letter in front of it and describe another country's brand of warfare?
John, you're just on my case this morning, aren't you?
No, I'm teeing you up, Brad. It's like I consider you like a 5-year-old, and I'm the t-ball coach. I just put the ball on the tee, and you could say, move to St. Louis, or you could say, asymmetrical warfare.
How about I have to go to the bathroom? I'll be right back.
I like that, Brad.
If I'm a 5-year-old.
And Mark Reardon had probably the second biggest piece of news was that Ann Wagner was on the show. I hope that the biggest piece of news that came from Mark Reardon's show yesterday made Brad's top 3 in segment B today.
Are you talking about Randy Raley?
Who's that, Brad? Is he the leader of the best station in the Westplex? Is he running for something?
The interesting part of the story with Randy Raley, we'll talk about that next break. He doesn't even live here anymore. Did you know that?
Did he move to somewhere south?
No.
Where did he move, Brad?
He lives in Illinois. He lives up near Quincy.
Well, he's running for Congress up there.
I know, which is bizarre. I see. Does anybody in the St. Louis area, we got Dave Murray who lives in Palm Springs, we got Randy Raley who lives in Quincy, we have J.C. Corcoran lives in Florida. Does anybody who's quote unquote in St. Louis media live here anymore besides you and me, John? Are we the only?
I don't know. I saw a video on YouTube of Brad Hildebrand going over the edge at Caesar's Palace. So I heard he just set up residence in Las Vegas.
Funny you should mention that because I have a really funny story about that. It's funny you should mention that because I got a call yesterday from Habitat for Humanity.
They finished your house, Brad. Congratulations.
The lady couldn't have been nicer. But I talked to her for 20 minutes, and I think after we got off the phone, I think she put a gun to her head and shot herself because.
Boy, imagine if she did 60 minutes Monday through Friday.
Well, see, here once again, if there's a guy that can help out Habitat for Humanity, because they're doing Over the Edge at Embassy Suites, I don't know, in September or something like that. And she told me the funniest story, which she didn't think was funny, but I thought was absolutely positively hilarious. But
if we wrap up Brad's top 3 early in B block today, will you continue that story for us? Because I'd love to hear that.
I will. It was so funny. I'm thinking to myself, okay, here we go. Okay, Brad's top 3 is up next. And by the way, John, how many times in a row am I doing Brad's top 3? Tell me.
I think you're pushing. You're going to be close to 20 sometime soon.
I think today's number 16 or 17, to be honest
I
with you.
believe it, Brad.
Yeah,
You're
okay.
still in jailbait territory, but you're pushing 18.
That's what she said.